The granite in the Great Pyramid, if you look at the famous King's Chamber, its walls and its roof are, the ceiling of the King's Chamber are all made with gigantic granite blocks.
Grok AI just exposed the secret about how ancient Egyptians cut granite, and researchers are completely shocked. The cuts on those stones show a variation of only 4.3%. That number should be totally impossible.
It is very hard for archaeologists to explain how that was done using purely leverage and mechanical advantage.
When humans repeat the same task by hand, the natural variation runs between 12 and 22%. So, how did people thousands of years ago produce cuts more consistent than anything a human hand could manage today? And when Grok searched for the closest match to those exact marks, it did not find primitive tools. It found modern industrial machines. Technology that did not exist until the 20th century. Did the ancient Egyptians have access to lost technology that has been deliberately erased from every history book?
I think we're looking again at a lost technology. And it was this ancient apocalypse 12,800 years ago that wiped that from the human memory banks.
And if they did, why has nobody ever given us a straight answer? Grok just exposed the truth, and it will completely change the way you see ancient Egypt forever. The quarry and the official story. For years, the textbook answer to how Egypt cut its granite sounded simple enough to believe without question. Nobody questioned it. Nobody tested it. So a group of researchers decided to change that. They gathered real craftsmen. They handed them real diorite hammers, the exact tool history books say the ancient Egyptians used. Then they gave one simple instruction: strike the granite, again and again. Exactly the way the theory claims it happened thousands of years ago, until smooth curved cuts appear, just like the ones sitting deep inside the Aswan quarry today. The craftsmen took their positions, they gripped their hammers tight, and they swung. Everyone watching held their breath. Strike after strike came down on the stone. The sound of rock hitting rock echoed through the air. Then something shocking happened. The first crack appeared in the wrong place and left a big ugly wound. Then another. Then another. Every single blow left a different wound behind. Some cuts went deep. Some barely scratched the surface. In some places, the edges cracked and broke clean away. One of the workers stepped back, breathing hard, staring at the mess in front of him. This wasn't supposed to happen, not like this. The real cuts sitting inside Aswan are smooth and even, every single one flowing together like they were never touched by human hands at all. What sat in front of these craftsmen now looked nothing like that. They were rough, jagged, broken in all the wrong places. If diorite hammers really cut this quarry thousands of years ago, this test should have proven it beyond doubt. It didn't. It proved the exact opposite. So, if the official story just failed its own test, right in front of everyone watching, what does that actually mean? Was the ancient world hiding something history books never wanted to admit? And if simple stone hammers didn't do this, then what did? To answer that, we need to go back to where this all started. On the banks of the Nile River in southern Egypt sits a place that has confused scientists and historians for years. It is called the Aswan Granite Quarry. From far away, it looks like nothing more than an abandoned site, huge stones and unfinished blocks scattered across empty desert. But walk closer, and that feeling disappears fast. Here's the part nobody can fully explain. Something sitting in this quarry is supposedly harder to cut than steel. That something is granite. Real granite rated a 7 on the hardness scale scientists use for rock. Hard enough that some experts say it feels tougher than ordinary steel. But the real shock was never the stone itself. It was the marks cut into it. Long curved lines ran across the rock, spaced almost perfectly apart, like something huge and steady had glided through in one single motion. These cuts flowed into each other like waves rolling one after another. No breaks, no mess. None of the shaky, uneven lines a human hand always leaves behind. Almost everyone who saw these cuts for the first time asked the same question. These are really thousands of years old? For decades, the official answer stayed the same. No secret machines, no mystery tools. Ancient Egyptians did this with plain diorite stones, swinging them against the granite for hours until the shape slowly appeared. Now, here's where that story gets heavier. Historians believe around 20,000 people worked in these quarries. About 15,000 of them worked in shifts, so the pounding never once stopped, day or night. These workers are believed to have swung their hammers for close to 12 hours straight, every single shift, for months, sometimes years, just to free one single block of stone. And the job came with its own horror hiding inside it. Ancient Egyptians didn't only pound this stone, they burned it too. They built roaring fires directly against the granite, let the heat build for hours, then threw cold water on it so the sudden shock cracked the rock apart. Picture what that meant for the men doing it. They worked inches from open flame, trapped in a stone bowl that held heat like an oven, in a desert where modern visitors have recorded temperatures past 114 degrees. When that cold water hit the scorching rock, it didn't just crack stone. It exploded into scalding steam and flying rock fragments, and that blast went straight back at the same workers who lit the fire. Men got roasted where they stood. Steam burned their skin raw. Flying rock tore into arms and faces before anyone could even step back. Some dropped their tools and screamed. Some just froze, too burned and too stunned to move. And if the fire didn't break them, the desert waited to finish the job. At quarry sites like Wadi Hammamat, workers carved prayers straight into the rock walls, begging their gods for protection against thirst, against getting lost in the shifting heat, against never making it home again. Whole expeditions, thousands of men strong, marched into that desert for jobs exactly like this one. Historical records describe the conditions and the death toll at these sites as brutal. So, on paper, the theory sounds simple enough. Thousands of workers pounding stone in shifts month after month until a shape slowly appears. But does that math actually hold up? When modern engineers tested this by hand, the real numbers came back and destroyed that idea completely. One worker, swinging a diorite hammer for a full hour, only managed to clear away a small cup's worth of stone. That's it. A full hour of swinging, sweating, and straining just to knock loose an amount of granite you could hold in one hand. Now think about what that actually means for one single block. How many hours does it take to freeze something the size of an obelisk, one small cup at a time? It didn't take one worker a few days. It took thousands of workers, each one swinging for hours, every single shift, for months, sometimes years, just to free one block of stone. Same motion, same spot, same exhausting swing, over and over, watching almost nothing change in front of them, day after day for months on end. And that's exactly why the failed hammer test, at the start of this story, matters so much. Hold those rough, broken test marks up next to the real cuts sitting inside Aswan, and the difference stops being small. The real cuts move like something steady and mechanical, glided through in one direction. Arc after arc, spaced almost perfectly apart, never once wavering. Experts say a human hand can never fully avoid small mistakes. People get tired, their grip shifts. The angle of every strike changes slightly, strike after strike. That's simply how the human body works. But inside Aswan, that normal human sloppiness is almost nowhere to be found. And that's exactly where the old theory and the real evidence crash straight into each other. Pounding stones and desperate prayers were never going to settle an argument this deep. The only way to get a real answer was to remove human judgment completely and hand every single mark over to something that had never even heard of Egypt. The numbers and the machine. Humans had already failed to explain these cuts, so researchers stopped asking people for opinions and handed the whole mystery over to artificial intelligence. First, they built a perfect digital copy of the quarry. Thousands of high-resolution photos stitched together into one giant 3D model, so every single mark could be measured from any angle, down to the smallest detail. Then came the part that made this test actually mean something. Nobody told the AI what it was looking at. It wasn't told this was Egypt. It wasn't told this was ancient. It wasn't given a single hint about what answer researchers were hoping to hear. This is called a blind test, and it exists for one reason only. The moment you tell an investigator what they're supposed to find, some part of them starts finding it, whether it's real or not. This exact problem has fooled trained human experts for decades, in real criminal trials, where knowing the expected answer in advance quietly convinced smart, careful people to see things that weren't actually there. That's exactly why this test had to be blind. Whatever this AI found next, it wasn't told to find it. So what did it find? The AI studied 847 separate cuts across that quarry. It measured the curve of every single one. It measured the angle each tool struck the stone. It measured the depth, the spacing, and the consistency across every single mark. And then it delivered its number, 4.3%. But what does that number actually mean? Here's the simple version. The AI measured things like the curve of each cut, the depth, and the spacing on all 847 cuts. Then it compared cut to cut, checking how different one cut was from the next. That difference is called variation. A low number means the cuts are almost identical to each other. A high number means every cut looks a little different from the last one, like a human made it. Now hold on to that. Because what came next is where things stopped making sense. When a real person repeats the exact same motion again and again by hand, no two strikes ever come out identical. Never. Because of that, when real humans use real hand tools today, and researchers measure how much their cuts differ from one another, that difference lands somewhere between 12% and 22%. That's the normal human range, every time. So when these 847 ancient cuts come back at 4.3%, the researchers were completely shocked. 847 cuts, made in completely different corners of the quarry, thousands of years apart in some cases. And they all came out looking almost exactly the same, closer to each other than a human being can even manage on their best day with modern tools in modern hands. Whatever made these cuts wasn't struggling. It wasn't even close to human, so the AI kept digging. It compared these cuts against thousands of tool signatures stored in its database, ancient and modern, looking for one that matched perfectly. 3 suspects survived. The first was a diamond rotary tool. This is a spinning blade lined with tiny industrial diamonds, one of the hardest materials on Earth. At full speed, it cuts through solid granite with clean, smooth precision. But here's what makes that unsettling. This exact type of tool still kills people today. Workers who spend years cutting stone with diamond blades can develop silicosis, an incurable lung disease caused by breathing microscopic stone dust. In just the last few years, hundreds have become seriously ill, and dozens have died. If something like this really existed thousands of years ago, anyone standing nearby would have been breathing in a danger they couldn't escape. The second suspect was a water jet cutter. This tool doesn't use a blade at all. Instead, it shoots a thin, extremely powerful stream of water mixed with gritty abrasive particles, all fired at such high pressure that it slices through solid rock the way scissors slice through paper. The third suspect was an ultrasonic cutting tool. This one uses a blade that vibrates back and forth so fast that the human ear cannot even hear it happening. Even though nobody could hear it working, that invisible vibration is still strong enough to cut through stone with total precision. Then the verdict came back, and it was clear. Grok AI compared all 3 suspects against every tool signature in its entire database, and one of them stood far above the rest, with 94% confidence: the diamond rotary tool. Out of everything the AI had ever measured, this was the closest match it could find, by a wide margin, and it wasn't even close. And that's where everything fell apart. Diamond rotary cutting tools are a 20th century invention. There is no historical record anywhere of anything like this existing back when these cuts were supposedly made. So the AI just handed everyone a confident, specific answer. And that answer is a piece of technology that shouldn't have existed yet. And that's exactly where this leaves a hole, one worth holding on to, because this verdict is nowhere near the full picture. This match only tells us the shape of tool that could have made these cuts. It doesn't explain why there's no cracking found beneath any of them. It doesn't explain why the oldest cuts in this entire quarry somehow look better than the newer ones. It doesn't explain how anyone could have used a spinning blade inside shafts too narrow for a person to even stand up straight in. This verdict is one piece of a much bigger puzzle, not the answer itself. And those missing pieces are exactly what this investigation goes looking for next. So if none of those tools existed thousands of years ago, then what did? That question alone was hard to answer. But an even bigger problem was waiting. Matching a tool to a mark on flat, open stone is one thing. But could that same tool actually fit into every single place these marks appear? Because not all of these marks sat out in the open. Some of them were buried deep underground, inside spaces barely wide enough for one person to even stand in. So researchers went to check. They went straight down into the one place a machine like this should never have been able to fit: the shafts and the microscope. In different parts of the Aswan quarry, deep, narrow shafts drop straight down into the rock, nearly 30 to 50 feet, some barely 3 to 4 feet wide at the top. From above, they look like ordinary holes, nothing more. But climb down inside one, and that's where the shock really starts. Because on the walls of these shafts, the exact same curved spiral cuts found up in the open quarry show up again. Same depth, same pattern, same shape, almost identical. Down here, in a hole this tight. And this isn't just uncomfortable. Shafts like this are some of the deadliest places a person can work in any century. Heat builds up fast with nowhere to escape, and heat stroke in tight, unventilated spaces like this has killed workers throughout history, long before anyone ever swung a tool inside one. And that's where the real problem hits. If the old hammer theory is true, a worker needs at least 18 to 24 inches of open space just to swing a hammer hard enough to strike granite with real force. Inside these shafts, that space simply doesn't exist. In many spots, a person can barely stand, let alone swing anything. So how did anyone even do this? Nobody had an answer. So researchers grabbed a microscope and pointed it straight at the stone. What they saw next changed everything. Here's what they expected to find. When a hammer strikes hard stone over and over, the surface fractures. Tiny crystals crack apart in every direction. Edges turn rough and ugly. Cracks spread deep beneath the surface, way past what the eye can see. Under a microscope, hammer damage looks like total chaos. That's what they expected. That is not what they found. Instead, researchers found something impossible. A clean, sharp boundary, right where the cut stone met the untouched stone beside it. Separated. Like something sharp had slowly sliced straight through it. And then came the part that stopped everyone cold. There was almost no damage underneath the cut. None. If a hammer had made this, cracks should have torn deep into the stone below. They didn't. Every single bit of force landed exactly on the cut itself, and nowhere else. Wait. What? Because this exact pattern has a name, and it's not a name anyone expected to hear in a granite quarry. It's used in forensic science to study wounds on human bodies. A clean cut with nothing damaged underneath is the signature of a blade, a controlled, deliberate slice. That meant this granite wasn't struck, it was cut. Cleanly. The same way a surgeon's blade separates skin instead of tearing it apart. Then came the discovery that made everyone go quiet. Buried inside these cuts, researchers found something called corundum. It's a mineral almost as hard as diamond. And here's why that matters. Corundum is the exact same material factories grind up today to make cutting discs, because it's hard enough to slice through stone. So finding it stuck inside these ancient cuts isn't just strange. It means whatever cut this stone left behind the actual grinding material machines use to cut stone today. And this mineral has a dark side too. In the last 100 years, workers who breathed in fine corundum dust got sick, really sick. It scarred their lungs for life, and in many cases, it killed them. So think about that for a second. Whatever made these cuts thousands of years ago wasn't just leaving marks behind. It was filling the air with the exact same dust that still destroys human lungs today. And it didn't stop there. Right next to that corundum, researchers found something else. Tiny carbon structures, shaped like diamonds. Diamond is the hardest material on Earth. It's also the exact material every modern cutting blade uses to slice through granite today. So, finding something shaped like diamond sitting inside a cut that's supposedly thousands of years old isn't just a coincidence, it's proof. Sitting right there inside the stone. When Grok AI combined every single piece of this together, the spiral patterns, the clean cut, the missing damage underneath, the hard particles, it landed on one final conclusion. This wasn't hammer work. This wasn't Bronze Age tools. The closest match, once again, was industrial-grade diamond abrasive rotary cutting. Under the microscope, This granite didn't look broken, it looked operated on. By now, the researchers were desperate to know exactly when these cuts were made. The stone reader. Here's the one sentence you need to hold on to for everything that comes next. The oldest cuts in this quarry are the best ones ever made here. Think about how technology normally works. The first phone ever made looks nothing like the phone in your pocket today. Every new version gets better than the last one. That's just how progress works. Everywhere, every single time. Except here. So, how do we even know these cuts are that old? Here's where it gets interesting. In many parts of the Aswan quarry, researchers found old red paintings sitting right on top of the cutting marks. These are called red ochre paintings. And here's why that matters so much. The paint sits on top of the cut. That means the cut came first, and someone painted over it much later. When researchers dated these paintings, some believe they could be almost 2,000 years older than early Egypt itself. So if the paint is that old, the cut underneath it has to be even older still. And red paint like this wasn't just decoration back then. Across almost every ancient culture on Earth, red ochre shows up again and again in one place. Graves, painted onto the dead, scattered across burial sites, believed to represent blood and life itself. So, why would someone paint a symbol this closely tied to death directly onto a quarry wall? Unless this place meant something far bigger than just cutting stone. So, Grok AI ran a new test. It compared the shape and pattern of different cuts against how old each one was believed to be. This test even had its own name, temporal precision analysis. The result came back with 91% confidence, and it flipped everything. The older the cut, the more perfect it looked. The newer the cut, the rougher and messier it became. Backward, completely backward. And once you actually sit with that, it stops being just strange. It becomes frightening. Because that means whatever this knowledge was, it wasn't growing. It was dying out. Generation after generation, whoever was cutting this stone knew less than the people before them. The skill wasn't being passed down. It was slipping away piece by piece until it disappeared completely. Something was lost here. Something nobody ever wrote down, nobody ever explained, and nobody ever managed to save. So, who were the people making the oldest, best cuts here? Here's something worth sitting with. This exact time period lines up with one of the darkest chapters in early Egyptian history, a period called the First Dynasty, Egypt's very first ruling dynasty, sitting right at the start of Egyptian civilization itself. Archaeologists have confirmed that during Egypt's earliest dynasties, when a king died, servants died with him, rows of them, buried in graves built side by side around the king's tomb, all sealed under one continuous roof. That detail matters because it proves they didn't die naturally over time. They died together on the same day and were buried together on that same day. This is called retainer sacrifice, and it's a real confirmed discovery, not a theory. And here's the one detail that makes this genuinely disturbing. Under one single king, King Jer, archaeologists found more than 300 of these sacrifice servants buried around his tomb alone. Researchers still debate exactly how they were killed. Some believe they were strangled. Others point to poison, since many of the skeletons show no wounds or trauma at all, which would fit a death by poisoning rather than violence. Either way, hundreds of people were killed on command on the same day, so they could keep serving a king after he died. This is the exact same era the stone reader theory is pointing to, the era of the oldest, most perfect cuts in the entire quarry. So the same people, or the people right before them, who somehow understood granite well enough to cut it flawlessly, were also living in a society organized enough and ruthless enough to kill hundreds of people in a single day just to bury them next to one dead king. This isn't just proof of a lost skill. It's proof that whoever had this skill existed inside a civilization capable of something far darker than we usually give ancient Egypt credit for. But the mystery didn't stop at timing. It went even deeper. The granite isn't the same all the way through. Inside it, there are different layers, some parts harder, some parts weaker, with natural weak lines running through the stone where it can split apart more easily. Today, engineers use scanning equipment to find these weak spots before they even start cutting, so they can do more work with less effort. And when Grok AI checked, it found something chilling. Many of these ancient cuts already followed those exact same natural weak lines. Like whoever made them already knew exactly where the stone was strongest, and exactly where it would give way easiest. With 88% confidence, the AI confirmed it. These cuts weren't random. They followed what engineers call an optimal path, the exact route that removes the most stone using the least amount of force. Some now call this the stone reader theory. The idea that whoever did this didn't just cut the stone, they understood it before they ever touched it. And here's something that makes this even stranger. Ancient Egyptian embalmers had that exact same kind of hidden knowledge, but about human bodies instead of rock. Passed down through trained families, this was knowledge of what lies beneath skin that looks the same on the outside. Whether or not the two are connected, this civilization is already famous for understanding what's hidden inside something just by looking at its surface. So, if the oldest hands here were somehow the most skilled, and if those hands understood what was buried inside solid granite before they even touched it, one question can't be avoided anymore. Was this skill ever finished? And did it ever leave Aswan at all? The obelisk and the spread across Egypt. The answer to that question is sitting right there in the quarry, still stuck in the ground, exactly where it was abandoned thousands of years ago. It's called the unfinished obelisk, and it's the largest obelisk ever attempted in the entire world. It's still attached to the same bedrock it was cut from, never moved, never finished. If it had been completed, it would have weighed more than 1,000 tons. Just cutting a piece of stone that size would have been an enormous task on its own. Moving it hundreds of kilometers, then standing it straight up, would have each been just as hard. So, why does it just sit there, unfinished, forever? Mainstream history has a simple answer. While workers were cutting this massive block, a large crack suddenly appeared straight through the stone. A crack that big meant the entire obelisk was ruined, so according to this theory, workers simply gave up and walked away, leaving it exactly where it cracked. Sounds reasonable enough, right? Except it isn't. Because when researchers looked closer, they found something the official story can't explain. Cutting marks continue on this obelisk, past the exact spot where the crack sits. That means work kept going, even after the crack had already appeared. If the crack really stopped everything, work should have ended the second it showed up. It didn't. And here's what makes this even stranger. The marks on this obelisk match the rest of the quarry exactly. Same curved arcs, same spacing, same precision. Even down in the lower section, where there's barely any room to move, the cuts show no drop in quality at all. So, what actually happened here? History doesn't say. No record shows workers ever coming back. No evidence shows anyone ever trying to finish the job. And here's something that makes this loss feel even heavier. This obelisk is widely believed to belong to Hatshepsut, one of the only women to ever rule Egypt as pharaoh in her own right. After she died, her own successor tried to erase her from history completely. Her name was chiseled off monuments, her statues were smashed, her image was removed wherever it appeared. And this wasn't random destruction. Ancient Egyptians believed erasing someone's name destroyed their soul, wiping them out of existence forever, in this life and the next. So, this obelisk isn't just an unfinished stone. It might be one of the last surviving traces of a ruler someone tried, quite deliberately, to make disappear completely. But if this mystery were only happening in one quarry, at one obelisk, people could call it a coincidence and move on. It isn't only happening here, because the same marks show up somewhere else entirely. At the Giza Pyramid Complex, specifically at the Valley Temple of Khafre, one of the oldest and strangest granite structures anywhere in Egypt. And here's the detail that should stop you. At this site, giant granite blocks weighing hundreds of tons are fitted together so perfectly that a blade cannot even slide into the gap between them. Under a microscope, these blocks show the exact same signs found back at Aswan. Clean boundaries, almost no cracking underneath. Tiny curved marks that look just like a spinning tool. When researchers measured the difference between the marks at Giza and the marks at Aswan, the gap came out to less than 5%. Two completely different locations, two completely different stones, almost the exact same method. And this structure wasn't just used for pharaohs. At a site called the Serapeum of Saqqara, Some of the most precisely cut granite boxes in all of Egypt weren't built for kings at all. They were built for bulls, sacred bulls the Egyptians believed were living gods on earth. When one of these bulls died, the entire country stopped and mourned for 60 straight days. People shaved their heads. They gave up meat. Then the bull was mummified and sealed inside a granite coffin weighing up to 80 tons, cut with a level of precision people still can't fully explain today. Think about that. This level of stonework wasn't just for royalty. It was used to bury an animal with more ceremony than most humans in history ever received. After finding all of this, researchers widened the search even further into sites across the Nile Delta. And the same pattern showed up there too. The oldest cuts were the best ones. The newer cuts were rougher every time. Grok AI took everything it found, from Aswan, from Giza, from the Nile Delta, every single site, and combined it all together. Then it delivered one final number, 89% confidence. Here's what that number actually means. This wasn't just one strange quarry with one unexplainable mystery anymore. The same cutting method showed up again and again, at site after site, across different parts of Egypt. So at some point in history, this exact method didn't just exist in one place. It spread across an entire civilization. Grok AI's final verdict. So after everything, Grok AI was finally asked the one question this entire investigation was built around from the very start. How was this actually done? And 3 real answers had been circling this exact mystery for years, argued by real researchers and real engineers long before this AI ever got involved. Now, for the first time, all 3 were about to be weighed together against everything gathered across this entire case. The first answer is the machine theory. The idea here is simple. A spinning tool, tipped with something as hard as diamond, presses against the stone and grinds through it layer by layer in one steady motion. That's what leaves marks this clean and this consistent over and over, no matter where the cut is made. And everything we've already found backs this up. The diamond signature buried in the cuts, the 94% confidence match Grok AI already gave us. But here's something worth sitting with. These same cutting tools, diamond rotary blades, water jets, ultrasonic cutters, weren't invented to build things. They were invented for war. Armies needed a way to cut through military armor. That's what pushed this technology forward first. Only later did people start using these same tools to cut things like granite. So, if a machine really made these cuts, that machine's ancestor wasn't built to construct anything. It was built to destroy. The second answer is the sound theory. The idea here is simple. A specific vibration, aimed at one exact spot, could shake the granite's crystal structure hard enough to weaken it right there and only there. Once that one spot got weak enough, the stone could separate along it with barely any force at all. And this explains something the machine theory alone struggles with: the clean cut. The heat sitting in one tiny spot instead of spreading out. The complete absence of cracking underneath the surface. A blade grinds and pushes. A sound wave doesn't touch the stone at all. It just makes it fall apart from the inside at exactly one point. But if this is real, think about what that actually means for anyone standing nearby. Because sound at frequencies too low for the human ear to hear can do something terrifying to a living body. It can make organs shake. It can cause nausea, disorientation, vomiting, and in extreme cases, real physical damage inside the body itself. In the 1950s, researchers investigating a mysterious illness spreading through one facility eventually traced it back to invisible, silent vibrations coming from nearby machines. Nobody could hear a thing. People just kept getting sick. If a technology like this really cut through solid granite, then whoever stood too close to it while it worked wouldn't have needed a blade to get hurt. The sound alone would have been enough to tear them apart from the inside. The third answer is the lost civilization theory. An older, far more advanced culture existed before mainstream history ever gives them credit for. And this fits 2 of the strangest findings in this entire case. The timeline running backward, where the oldest cuts are somehow the best ones. And the stone reader pattern, where whoever cut this granite already understood exactly what sat hidden inside it. So, here's the real question. How did they know all this? Normally, a skill like this takes generations to build. People fail, learn, fail again, and slowly get better over hundreds of years until the skill finally reaches its peak. But that early learning curve is missing here completely. The oldest cuts already show the finished skill, fully formed, with no rough early attempts sitting anywhere underneath them. That leaves one real explanation. This skill didn't start with ancient Egypt at all. It was already fully developed long before ancient Egypt even began, which means it came from an older culture, one history has never given credit for, a culture that had thousands of years to practice and perfect this skill, long before the earliest cuts in this quarry were ever made. So, if that's true, where did they go? Real scientists have actually asked this same questions, and there's a real serious theory behind it. It's called the Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis. It proposes that around 12,900 years ago, pieces of a comet slammed into Earth, triggering a sudden, brutal freeze that wiped out entire species almost overnight. If an advanced culture really existed before that moment, a disaster this massive could have erased almost everything they ever built, leaving behind only scattered, broken traces. Traces exactly like the ones sitting inside this quarry right now. So, which one is it? Here's Grok AI's real answer, and it isn't a single pick. The machine theory explains what the surface of the stone looks like. The sound theory explains what the microscope found hiding underneath that surface. The lost civilization theory explains why the oldest work here is somehow the best work ever found. 3 separate answers, 3 separate pieces, and each one explains exactly what the other 2 can't. For years, different researchers argued for their own theory alone and never agreed with each other. Grok AI just did something none of them could do. It put all 3 pieces together, and for the first time, they finally form one complete answer. Here's what that answer actually says. A culture far older than we've ever given credit for already had this skill fully developed. They used a real cutting technology, something that worked like a spinning tool but was driven by sound, a vibration precise enough to weaken granite at one exact point and separate it clean without a single crack spreading underneath. That's why the surface looks machine cut, why the microscope shows no damage underneath, and why the oldest work is the most perfect work. It's one method, one skill, explaining all 3 mysteries at once. The stone is still sitting there right now, exactly where it was left thousands of years ago. The marks are still carved into it, exactly the way they were made.